Well, hello everybody. How's it going? It is February 28th. As a fun little note, there's a thing called MWC going on. But in the meantime, this is the RambleCast. I'm your host, Cody Toombs, and with me I have Corbin Davenport.
Hello.
So, like I said, MWC, it's happening. Though for those that don't know, which if you're listening to this show, I can't imagine you don't, but MWC is Mobile World Congress. It's happening in Barcelona, Spain, and this is a show where they basically it's all about smartphones. Not entirely. There are a few other things, but it's basically
it's a lot of just it's in the name. It's mobile stuff. So I saw there's a lot of laptop stuff, but phones are a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, technically, a lot of stuff is being announced. Honestly though, like, show me the exciting things. And look, I'm not saying that to be like overly hostile, but it's kind of funny that if you look at like The Verge has what is effectively a live blog of their MWC coverage, and it barely by one article goes to a second page, but the stuff that's here, most of it's not that special.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to say that this is the least interesting MWC ever. I haven't gone through and compared or paid much attention to all of them, but honestly, they don't have a lot of particularly exciting stuff here.
Yeah, this is definitely it's very much like E3 syndrome, where Apple's never been at MWC. Samsung usually does its own events, and in this case Samsung really didn't have anything to talk about because they just did a Galaxy event in January for the new S phones, so they don't really ever release anything in this part of the year. Maybe some budget phones, but that's really it. So it's sort of just everyone else, and like even like OnePlus, I don't know if they usually show off anything during these. They're kind of doing their own thing too. Well, they announced a watch, but we're mostly talking about phones.
Well, and no, I'm not going to give any lack of love to watches or even OnePlus. But yeah, the thing is, there's so little to say about, oh, a company has committed to do another Android Wear watch. All right, cool. Next. Like, it's interesting-ish, but odds are OnePlus isn't going to do anything particularly super exciting with a Wear watch. Nobody is really doing anything particularly exciting with a Wear watch. And that's not really meant as a slap. It's just, where is Wear? Like, yeah. There's not a whole lot to report unless it's like an actual platform change.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Though that said, hey, everybody thought Wear was kind of dying out, or at least maybe not dying out, but the list of companies that were going to do Wear watches seemed like it was drying up. And here's a company that has kind of been back and forth with the idea, and now they're saying they're going to do it. So, yay, I guess.
Yeah. Main thing was Fossil dropping out, so basically went to like the only companies building Wear OS watches was Google and Samsung and Mobvoi. I think Xiaomi also does that, but I don't know if they're like Wear OS proper or just kind of using the open source parts.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually Wear OS.
Yeah, so now OnePlus is in there too.
Which OnePlus, kind of like how HTC was rumored for years and years to be making a watch and then never did. Yeah, OnePlus has been supposedly courting Wear OS for ages, and it just somehow never happened. Um, or at least I don't think it's ever happened before, right?
With OnePlus.
Yeah.
No, there was rumors way back when, like when it was still Android Wear.
Mm-hmm.
But then it never happened, and then they made a smartwatch, but it was just a one of those real time OSs that doesn't have a lot of features, and that
Yeah.
was a complaint with that. So now it's Wear OS, and there's more. Part of this was Google's investing a little bit more in Wear OS's ability to go to like low power modes. So that's something Mobvoi kind of hacked in a long time ago. Is like this like theirs is different. Theirs is like literally a different OS that the watch boots to when you put it in low power mode, and it'll still record some stuff. But it's like a completely separate component. Google's trying to make like Wear OS have a low power mode that's still like in the same environment, and that's what the OnePlus watch is using. So maybe that was the missing component. OnePlus was like, hey, maybe we'll use Wear OS, but like you need a way for the watch to last more than 11 hours on a single charge. And Google was like, okay, sure, we'll try.
Yeah. So, hey, good news. I mean, it's a thing that's happening. But yeah, I also, no offense to OnePlus, but I'm also just not really too excited about it until we actually have the thing in front of us and can check it out. Let's see. Also hitting the stage, tons of AI stuff. I don't think we're gonna talk about that. There's honestly, most of it was a lot of companies just saying, we promise we'll have more to say, or we promise this thing is coming in the near future and it will be super exciting and cool. But in the meantime, we're not really going to tell you too much more. So
yeah, Google had a couple of minor things. The one thing I saw that was kind of nice is they are working on a thing for Android Auto where it can summarize long text messages or text conversations while you're driving. So, instead of like, oh, I got a message while I'm driving, let me hear all 40 of them in this chain. We'll try to speed it up a little bit.
That actually does remind me a little bit of this. I was the best man at a wedding years ago, and as is pretty much tradition, the bride added me, all of her bridesmaids, which this wedding, not that it's super important to this story, but for context, they did kind of a swap thing where the bride had a best man, and the groom had, we never really figured out what to call her, but yeah, she was basically his maid of honor or whatever. And yeah, anyway, there was a big Facebook group chat that was going on, and as I was driving the 4-hour drive from my home up to Portland, that's when they decided that was the perfect time to start having lots of conversations. So my phone was just going off relentlessly the entire drive. And yeah, some sort of AI to summarize some of that would have been kind of neat.
Yeah, I think this is definitely the one of the few parts of generative AI stuff that like I don't really think is bullshit. It's kind of this like, not like, it's not that important probably if it gets like this a little bit wrong. Like it's a text. If someone texts something important, then like you're probably just gonna pick up your phone and read it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
This kind of stuff where it's breaking down text into like a quick read and you can read for more is good. One thing that I don't know if Google does that I know Apple does, and I don't know entirely what they were using for this, but I know when I'm driving and I have my iPhone hooked up to CarPlay in my car, and like, for example, my mom sends me a text message of like one of her dogs, and it'll say like new text from mom. It's a picture of a dog, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I don't know if Android Auto does that yet, but I guess that's something else they could use Gemini for, because it's supposed to also be able to recognize images in addition to using text as input.
So let's see. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, well, one of the things that jumps out at me is I would like to. Okay, so I think if you're going to summarize messages, that's great. And if you get something wrong, it probably doesn't matter, but in some instances it might. What I want more than that is some kind of AI that is able to figure out, here's what's important to you. Maybe you can even tell it, like, do you care about this particular thread of a conversation? But it needs to be able to tell you the things that are actually important versus the idle chit chat kind of stuff. Do I need to hear about two people in the group chat talking about let's just say their shoes or something? No, I don't care about that part of the conversation. Do I need to hear when someone says, oh, okay, we're all going to get together and meet at this time for dinner or lunch? Or someone saying, oh, I have to stop somewhere, delay lunch by like half an hour. That I need to hear. Like, we need the AI to be able to discern intent, which, from what I can tell, that's actually one thing that they're still not good at.
Yeah, because again, you have to think for that, and they don't think, so you're gonna have issues there.
And also, again, like, I don't care about a discussion about shoes. Notably in this context, I'm talking about shoes that are being used for the weddings, so that actually can be a relevant discussion to other people in the group chat. So the context and relevance to the specific listener can be an important aspect of this. And so, yeah, we need AIs that are capable of following an intent thread and being able to, or even if it's a thing like it might tell you about a particular topic and you're like, oh yeah, I don't care about this, don't tell me more about it. As long as the AI can take that as input, that's great. But again, we're not really there yet. So yeah, I'm hoping, expecting, thinking maybe someday we'll get that kind of a thing, but until we do, I'm not convinced that this is really going to be that useful. Let's see. Austin also brought up that the OnePlus watch bands are ugly. Which, yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, they're not the worst, but they're definitely on the generic side. They look like just your typical silicone band with evidently ridges. Because sure, there's nothing better than having stuff getting caught up in your watch band. So yeah, I don't know. Did you have more on the AI?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Not a lot. Not a lot there. Most of the little stuff.
Yeah, if anyone watching can't tell, the enthusiasm for this event, it's not there.
Yeah. That's okay.
But hey, there was one thing that's also only barely there, and that was Lenovo came out with a transparent laptop display. So that looks cool. It would be absolutely miserable to use, and software is not really designed to work on something like this, generally speaking, so it's also going to probably never really be very well supported, but it's a neat idea.
Yeah, I was reading their press release for that, and they were talking about. They were trying to make a case for it, like, oh, guys, the XR augmented reality spatial computing stuff is really hot right now. What if we could put like an image overlay on the screen for what was behind it? I don't really know how well that would work, but they were trying to say something about it.
Yeah, no, and hey, it's not like I don't think that this kind of technology is worth making. It obviously is. There are plenty of uses for this. Frankly speaking, if you can make this a little bit more transparent, makes a great heads-up display technology for cars. There are definitely ways to use this. It's just that like doing it as a laptop, not particularly useful. The biggest issue obviously here is the more bright colors that you have on the screen, the more you're making it not necessarily opaque, but like that's what lights up. You have to have a lot of black in order for the transparent display to work, to make sense, like to be like actually transparent. And most apps are not designed with black backgrounds and stuff like that. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just this is probably not going to be the most useful form for this. Also, hello Carson, how's it going, man? Let's see. Was there anything else exciting? I don't think there. I think out of the weird goofy ideas, there was also the phone that bends around your wrist.
There's one of those every year.
Exactly.
every year, LG and Samsung are like, guys, look at this cool thing we can do with a screen, and we're like, can you put in a problem? You're like, no, it's just the screen part that bends every time.
Yeah. Which, hey, you gotta do it, I guess, but it's something. Okay. I did kind of dig the color changing phone. It has an e-ink display, or a color e-ink display on the back that, for whatever reason, in this instance, they've got it so when you plug power into it, that's when it starts like color shifting, which is kind of awful. But I do kind of like the idea of sticking an e-ink display back there and you could just change the color of your phone kind of at a whim. It would probably never produce like good colors, like lots of deep rich colors like you would probably actually want it to do, but hey, it's a kind of a neat idea.
I had a phone that could change colors on the back. It was my Moto G, and it had a plastic back, and they sold replacement backs, and I had the stock like black plastic back one, and then I had a yellow one that looked sick, and I had a white one, so it was like panda color scheme basically. It's pretty cool.
So what I would want to see with something like this, I mean, this is neat and all, but what I want to see is, one, give us the ability, or give it some ability to show patterns, images, whatever on the back, like not just flat color, but obviously like give a little more flexibility. That would be pretty neat. And two, and more importantly, give it an absolutely great feature. Let it be used for selfies, because you have the better cameras on the back. Let it just show me, like put it into camera mode, put it as like a reverse selfie or whatever, and then I could just use it for framing. You don't need high frame rates. You just need it to be good enough that you can see what you're shooting.
Yeah.
And yeah, These are actual useful features. I don't know that they necessarily make a ton of sense, but well, with the technological cost of wiring that up, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense, but I think it'd be neat. Let's see. Was there anything else? I mean, there were a few other things, and we're going to get to those momentarily, but I'm just kind of quick hitting all the dumbest or weirdest stuff. I'm not even going to show the picture for this, but let's see. Who was it? Duracell? Oh, no, Energizer. Energizer decided to stick a phone and a battery together. It almost...
Every year there's one of them.
Yeah, it almost looks like somebody glued a phone to a battery. Like, it's not even subtle how goofy it is. But hey, it's 18,000 milliamps or milliamp hours. It's something.
Do we know what the fast charging rate on that bad boy is? Is it going to take a week to fully charge?
I can imagine.
I remember that was the big issue with all these phones back when we only had like micro USB, like weird proprietary that could get to like 10 watts maybe.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, guys, I've got my phone. It's plugged into the wall. It will be recharged in 2 weeks.
Let's see. I don't know that they gave the fast charging rate, but they did, of course, have to give the talk time and idle time. Talk time is rated for 122 hours. So, you know, if you want to leave your phone going for 5 days straight, you can. And the standby time is 2,252 hours, which is just short of 94 days.
That's a lot.
Wait, Austin, is the TSA maximum 27,000? I thought it was... I would have sworn it was 29. But, yeah. Oh, sorry. I also misquoted. My bad.
Fake news, Cody.
I said that this was 18,000. I read the wrong line. It's 28,000.
For shame.
Yeah, so in theory that means it's over the TSA maximum, which kind of sounds like a problem. Kind of makes me wonder. Let's see. So there was stuff about the Galaxy Ring. I don't think we have enough details or care to talk about that. Unless I missed something, maybe I did.
Not really. They gave a hands-on to a couple outlets, but it still was not really a lot of information. They're still drip feeding info about it.
So, okay. Anyway, let's get to the actual real-ish announcements. First off, the absolute most important thing that is undeniable. It is just the biggest thing to come out of MWC. The Pixel 8 was named 2023's best smartphone. Yeah. Nobody cares.
My 2023 best phone was the iPhone 15 because that's the phone I bought in 2023.
That Apple got Corbin's money.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Now Corbin has completed his shilling duties, so he will get Apple's money. Oh wait,
yeah,
that part's not worked out yet.
Well, they said they send me a check. They didn't ask for my address though, so I don't really know how that's gonna work. But you know, I'm sure it's fine. They have it somewhere.
I mean, it is Apple.
Yeah.
If any company is definitely spying on you but claiming otherwise, it's Apple.
It's for it's for their Fitness Plus subscription or something.
Yes. Well, that's how you're actually going to get paid. They're not going to give you real money. They're just going to activate Fitness Plus.
Oh, great. That's just what I need.
Yeah, you'll definitely be using that. It's like a cheese of the month club for the lactose intolerant.
My fitness regime right now is just Beat Saber. So
Hey, for
take
what
that.
it's worth, that's
Take
actually
that level.
that can be pretty good
It
exercise.
is it is quite a workout, and also my brain does not process information fast enough to do the higher difficulties, but it's okay. I'm trying.
I don't know if that makes it better or worse. But yeah, anyway, so uh hey, good job for the Google team. You won an award that is an award. Um so and hey, look, I'll even give it to the Pixel 8 or the Pixel 8 Pro. It is a pretty good phone. Not to say I use mine as a phone so much. It's mostly a camera, but yeah, it seems like a pretty good device. Um let's see. So moving on to actual subjects this time, not joking. HMD is making some changes. They are they're gonna do an HTC basically. They're gonna lean a little bit more into their own brand and give a little bit less emphasis to the other companies that want to, or well, this isn't exactly the same thing, but they're going to give less emphasis to other brands. They want to be known more as HMD.
Yeah. They teased this last year a little bit, but basically, they're going to try using their own. I think just the HMD brand, which I don't think is like a great name, but sure, whatever. It's their name. They want to go with that. That's fine. Um, and they also made a point, but it's interesting that they've been using the Nokia name because HMD is like a lot of ex Nokia people, so it was pretty easy for them to work out that license deal, and I'm sure that's why it's probably not going to expire anytime soon because they don't care. They're not like ruining Nokia's name. They've had no exploding Nokia phones or anything, so seems fine. But I do wonder. I'm sure they're moving away, not just for, uh, not selfish isn't the right word. I guess like self-centered reasons. They just want their own thing. Um, but I don't entirely know what the value of the Nokia brand is on like smartphones and tablets. It kind of just is in that zone for me, like like all the other zombie brands that have been bought out. It's like up there with Palm and RCA and Polaroid and those kinds of brands that they just kind of get slapped on anything. Like I don't know what the last time Nokia was making phones was over 10 years ago now. So I don't really know what I get it for like when they want to make feature phones and like the sort of like occasional like retro inspired stuff because like like I think that's where the strongest brand recognition is like, oh yeah, I had a Nokia and this is like that Nokia, but it connects to 4G networks. That's pretty cool. But I don't know what the value is necessarily in doing that for like a normal smartphone you want to sell.
Yeah, well, in practical terms, I don't think that there's any person really remaining. Well, okay, I say that. I'm sure there's probably some there's either somebody who has what was Nokia what? Swedish?
Finnish.
Thank you. Maybe there's somebody from Finland that has really strong nationalism about the brand. Or maybe there's somebody out there that has really, really intense like BlackBerry level of like obsession with the brand, so they might be buying it, or the Nokia name might be sucking them in, but that's such a small number of people. I can't imagine it's worth really persisting the name. So yeah, I honestly, like, if I were HMD, one, I would probably change the name to something a little bit better, but yeah, I would also just stop using Nokia's name. I it didn't even really make sense when they were using it, or I didn't think so. It
I
makes less
I'm
sense now.
I mean I get entirely why, because when this started, we weren't that far out from uh when Microsoft killed the remains of Nokia. So it was like, oh, they're back. They're back now. They're gonna make Android phones. It's not technically Nokia, but it's like kind of close. And it worked to drum up headlines and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I don't really know what the there's probably less value in it now.
Yeah, I guess. Uh, I mean, to me, you're so okay. You're not wrong. It was.
I'm never wrong.
Stop it. No. I. It was reasonably close. You're right about that. But at the same time, it feels like the Nokia brand was already really diminished. I mean, Microsoft had a big hand in sort of diminishing the Nokia name. So yeah, when they adopted it to try to do Android devices, like, it wasn't the worst idea, but it was hard to believe that it was really drawing a bunch of attention. But I could see a version of the story where maybe somebody uh, who still had some affinity for the name might have been interested in taking it. I kind of have my doubts that lasted. At a certain point, I think that sort of pursuit of a brand name that was already basically a zombie name, like that diminished. So yeah, frankly, I would let the Nokia name go too, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just very unaware of the market where the name still mattered.
Yeah, the kind of underlying thing for this with me is that I don't think H&D is really they're not good at making smartphones. They're they're like
I heard they were okay.
they're okay. Like the phones physically are fine. I remember I reviewed a couple of them when I worked at Android Police. I think I reviewed maybe one more at XDA. Um, their issue is really just they are really bad at software updates. They're in that same camp as Motorola, where it's like pretty stock Android stuff. But the issue is that they're slow with the major updates. I think my understanding is that they're pretty abysmal with security updates, and I don't think that's acceptable anymore. It was a little bit more understandable when no one gave a shit, but now you can buy an iPhone SE for $500. The thing's going to be updated for like 5, 6, 7 years. Google is doing, I believe, for the Pixel 3a, it's 3 years of 3 years of major OS updates and 5 years of security updates. I think Samsung now does several years of security updates for their a lot of their budget phones. It depends. The ones that are in like the 400-ish range, like the Galaxy A phones, are pretty good with that. I'm sorry, the Galaxy A50 series. Once you go below that, it gets dicier. But that's still better than Nokia, so, or H&D. So again, I'd have maybe stronger opinions if I thought like these phones were really worth buying, but I don't understand why you would. Or at least I understand why, but I would caution you not to.
Yeah.
Just, please don't spend, that much money on a phone that gets security updates whenever they feel like it. That's kind of important these days, and everyone is doing better. So,
But with all that said, they may be leaving behind the Nokia branding, but evidently they've decided Barbie branding is the way to go. So, let's be honest, the company is still gonna lean heavily on branding, or like
yeah.
co-branding in this instance.
I mean, I think it wouldn't shock me if they maybe tried to do a little bit of the TCL move, where they'll swoop up some dead brands and maybe make something fine. TCL was worse
Yeah.
than HMD is, so if they want to try making a Palm phone, bringing that back, sure, maybe that's cool.
Well, in this instance, apparently they're planning to make a Barbie flip phone.
Yeah,
and
that announcement was so bizarre to me, because I would think you'd want to show the Barbie phone, and yet they did not. There are no pictures of this. They had like a whole like live thing at MWC. They had like a big, have you seen the Barbie movie?
Actually, no. I've almost watched it like 3 different times, and each time I've been busy.
All right, well, that's fine. I can explain this without the Barbie movie. Basically, they had like a human-sized Barbie doll box that the journalists could go stand in and take pictures. And so like there was this whole like show thing, but they didn't show the phone. What are you guys doing?
Yeah. You'd think the least they could have done is maybe card out one of the existing flip phones and just like put some stickers on it or something and be like, okay, this isn't a final model, but we swear it won't be too different.
Yeah, I mean, because that's probably what it's going to be. It's just going to be one of their Nokia budget phones, or the Nokia feature phones, but just pink and with a Barbie logo on it, because that's how this always goes.
See, I read this and my first thought is, if they're going to do this, is there a chance that this is like a folding phone, like an actual folding screen?
No, they said it's they said flip phone.
Yeah, no kidding.
They said flip phone. My understanding is that they mean that like budget, like the budget actual flip phones that they sell already.
Yeah, no. I read further down the paragraph. It says this retro feature phone. Oh yeah, they're going full scale, like this is an off the grid phone.
Austin said, unfortunately, Samsung has the rights to Oppenheimer branding. They did make a phone that blows up, so it would be fitting.
Man, which fits all the jokes. It really does. I wonder if they could get Cillian Murphy to show up and to be like, just to show up and say, Samsung's reintroducing the Note series, and we promise this one doesn't explode. He'd be the perfect person just to stand up on stage and just deadpan that whole presentation.
Be great. First Samsung event I would watch in 5 years.
What, because of Cillian Murphy? Actually, you know what? No, I'm with you on that. Now that I think about it, I'd watch. I'm not even that big of a fan, but I kind of just want to see what weird stuff would come out of that.
Yeah. Maybe it would be even more cringe somehow. I don't know how they pull it off.
I'm sure it would. They'll never top the. I want to call him Timmy, but I don't remember what the name was. They'll never top that event. That one was the height of Samsung cringe. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I don't think so.
Okay, it had three particular cringe elements. For one, there was a host that seemed very like hyper caffeinated in an almost like Microsoft presentation way. They had this kid who I'm gonna call little Timmy, but I don't remember what his actual name was.
Sure.
And he was like the exposition kid. At every turn he had to say something really, really weird and cringy, and no kid would ever talk like that. But then the worst part, one of the sketches that they did was this like bored housewives thing, kind of Desperate Housewives meets Bored Housewives, if you get my drift. And it had this group of women on stage. All of them are doing these really, really cringy cliches. They're all day drinking. They were all saying lots of really weird stuff. It was, oh god, it was so bad.
You really didn't have to keep talking after you said skit. That's that's the warning at tech events. Just don't do that.
Yeah, no, and it was 100% skits. The whole thing was like, not a sketch. Well, it was a sketch show basically, but it was like sketch show meets infomercial. The literal worst thing that's ever come out of the tech industry.
I'm turning off my computer.
This I will say is the only thing I've ever seen that was more cringe than HTC's really weird commercials, including that time that they did The Bachelor, or was it? Yeah, it was like a Bachelor thing with James Vanderbeek, marrying somebody to a phone, or the Robert Downey Jr. stuff with HTC, like all the different things HTC can stand for. Oh god.
Yeah, that's definitely, once I figure out like what the best setup is for occasional video based Tech Tales episodes, it's just gonna be like watching those. That's gonna be it. Like, let's fucking watch the Samsung 2013 tech event. Like, let's just, you know, take a shot of something every time it physically hurts to watch.
Recommendation, if you're planning on doing that, go find copies of all of this stuff now, because no, I'm serious. I actually went looking for the James Vanderbeek thing like 2 or 3 years ago, and it took like a good, I'd say 45 minutes to find it, because HTC has taken all this stuff down. Most of the places that covered it did too. Like, a lot of them were bought up by miserable companies that decide that they're going to delete old content and things like that. You know, we would know nothing about that sort of thing though. Or they like, you know, various channels were banned or removed for this reason or that reason. So yeah, a lot of this stuff is kind of like on the fringe of disappearing. So it'd be kind of
lost media.
Yeah, kind of like those BlackBerry executives who formed a band and posted their covers of famous songs. Those are now really hard to find. So yeah, find this stuff now if you want to do this as Tech Tales episodes. Okay, so anyway, moving on. Unless there was anything else you wanted to...
No.
Okay. So the last thing I saw that was interesting out of MWC, at least so far, comes out of Xiaomi. This is the one and only thing that actually strikes me as, oh, hey, this actually is worth talking about. So Xiaomi is coming out with a couple of new phones. This is their, what is it, the 14 Ultra and I think a regular 14, if I remember. Oh no, sorry, the regular 14 was last October. So the Ultra is now just coming out on its own. I'm not going to talk so much about the whole phone. Obviously, like, we're not going to see this in the States, which on that point, Xiaomi is actually planning on launching the 14 and 14 Ultra around the world, or more globally, just not in the US.
No,
like,
we don't get anything cool. Sorry.
Exactly. We're no longer allowed.
No, not allowed. We almost had more competition, and then Huawei got ban-hammered by the federal government, so we can't have that anymore.
Well, and in fairness, I mean, first it was ZTE, then it was Huawei. Now we've got our eyes set on DJI and have for years. Look.
Oh, now it's TikTok. We've moved on from phones. Now we're going to the software companies.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Like, any Chinese company right now has to be looking at the US and going, look, we'd love to, but no. We just can't trust you guys.
It's not worth it. Yeah, it's like don't even bother. We just, especially like not even worrying about the federal government, but being like, oh, I can't wait for the Fox News section where they are not even Fox News, just anyone would be like, oh no, this Chinese phone company is making phones here. Don't buy the Chinese phones.
Mm-hmm.
In the same exact way they've all covered TikTok for the past 2 years of like, oh no, the evil Chinese communists, we're gonna keep saying Chinese, want your TikTok information.
Yeah.
That's definitely been one of the most frustrating things to witness for the past 2 years is TikTok, very bad data practices, very obviously, but probably not noticeably different than any US tech company. But I haven't really seen any legislation or government officials talking about the US companies, except when they bring them up to do the funny interviews where they ask the tech CEOs what an email is. When they did this last time, they brought up the TikTok guy, and I think they kept calling him Chinese when he was like from Singapore.
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Well, it was, to be minimally fair here, it was just one racist a-hole who was he wasn't calling him Chinese. But he kept asking, what is your affiliation with China?
Yeah.
And the CCP. So, the racism was definitely there, but not technically over the top. Technically. That said, I'm not about to defend China on numerous aspects. There's plenty that's wrong with them, and sure, I can get behind an argument of maybe, depending on what you do, maybe your phone shouldn't really be your phone, if it has certain things, should not necessarily be trusted to originate from a country that is maybe known for some spying and some other stuff. I'm not, look, it is what it is.
I just kind of I try to internally treat them as if they were a US company. Just like, yeah, they're not great with the data stuff.
Yeah.
But like, it's the same I would expect from Meta and Google and to some extent Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Is that rain?
Could be.
Oh wow, that's a lot of rain. Okay, well, hopefully my power doesn't go out.
Well, we'll know what happened if you suddenly drop off.
Wow, it is storming all of a sudden. I didn't know that. Well, I did get a Apple weather notification, but of course I completely ignored it. So.
Oh yeah, I've gotten to the point I ignore those when they show up on my laptop.
Oh yeah, severe weather. Okay, well, that if I disconnect, that's why.
But anyway, oh, and I will quickly throw in, every once in a while, if certain politicians can find some excuse to claim that they're being censored, then they will talk about the data practices of non-Chinese companies too. But because
it's just very clear, like every single media reaction and like congressperson has it's just been nationalism. That's nationalism, maybe a little bit of racism. That's basically it.
Exactly. So anyway, getting back to the Xiaomi 14 Ultra,
yes,
there's
a cool phone we will not get.
Yeah, but to its credit, it does a few of the things that I've certainly said I'd like to see. For one, it actually has aperture controls on, I think it's just the main lens. I'm not 100% sure. But you can actually control the aperture on the cameras or camera. It has, I believe it was 3 real lenses and I think or 3 real cameras, and I think there was a 4th that was for something else, but I could be wrong on that too. Admittedly, I only got to skim this fairly quickly, but it is a pretty neat looking phone. Also, the you may notice that the camera configuration is in this giant camera bump. I saw a video that showed, apparently Xiaomi gave this to a director, basically is like a, here, try this out, tell us what you think. And, you know, it's the typical, the director came back saying, look, this is good enough. I don't need big cameras anymore. Like this, you can fit this into all kinds of places. It produces a great looking signal, or great looking image. And it's flexible. It has other advantages to it. So, the guy basically goes on to say, I might never use a real camera again. And it's the typical lines, but, the thing is, like, during the video, they're showing all these shots of them shooting scenes, and one of the things that immediately stood out is they had, it looked like, lens filters mounted right onto this thing. So it's hard to tell in this picture, but I think it probably is threaded for lens filters. So you could probably throw on like indie filters or like various sorts of like light altering filters. Right. There is a camera grip you can attach, which gives you more control, a shutter button, things like that. That's also shown in this. It's the typical junky grip that you can attach to any kind of phone, except this one's custom to this phone. And as you can probably tell also from this image, all Leica glass, which Leica, look, the company hit and miss when it comes to cameras. Well, I say miss mostly because their prices tend to be a little crazy, but they make great glass. Leica's glass is top notch. So assuming it's actually Leica glass and not just goofy Leica branding, then I expect this is probably a pretty great phone for photos. And to that point, I brought it up last week, or talked about it for a while last week. I've seen a few people in the motion cam community talking about how well Xiaomi phones do with that. So I know I won't get a chance to play with this phone, but Xiaomi, if you happen to hear this, send me one. I'd love to do stupid stuff with this phone.
Yeah. Send us a phone, because we're pro China here, as previously stated.
Yes.
No problems here.
Okay. Anyway, so enough about that. Let's move on and talk about, of all things. Well, first off, we're moving on from MWC entirely, and we're going to talk about TV stuff.
Whoa.
So Paramount wants to, Paramount's feeling a little bit like a hussy. It wants to hook up with somebody real bad. They've previously been reported that they were trying to hook up with Peacock, maybe like do kind of like a co-subscription kind of a deal where you could team up with or where like you could get both Peacock Plus Paramount Plus and Peacock. I forget what their namings are. Anyway, there was talk about that, and apparently they were also talking to Warner Brothers Discovery, which, mergers with them never go wrong. But yeah, apparently there was some talk about that, but might not be happening anymore. Corbin, thoughts?
Are you?
You weren't listening.
No, I was. I think it's astounding how the streaming wars have just completely broken these companies, and they now that they cannot fathom the idea that they could have a streaming service that is in any way like independent from them as a company. So the answer is, in order to have a competing, the answer is to have uh, a streaming service with a lot of content. We need to swallow up other studios, and now that has devolved into yet another merger after Discovery and Warner were, for some reason, allowed to merge, and it's not great. It's pretty clear that Disney should not have been allowed to buy Fox. I don't think uh, Discovery probably should have been able to merge with Warner, even though I think Discovery was technically smaller, but they were still huge companies, and of course they've had the same layoffs after layoffs as everyone else.
So Discovery, if I remember correctly, Discovery itself, like as a product, was
Right.
obviously way smaller. But they were part of another company or merger sometime back. And as a result, Discovery actually got really big as a company.
Yeah.
Um,
They had they had Discovery Channel stuff. They had like TLC. They had I know they also had like home the
mhm.
HGTV. So like that whole network of stuff. Um, just like very reality stuff. Um, and they were kind of what was the pitch was that Discovery was making a lot of very cheap shows, but they were making a lot of money, and Warner was making a lot of expensive stuff that was making some money, and they were going to put those two things together. Um,
Yeah, which turned out to not really be the case.
yeah, now they're just making. Uh, I don't know. I don't know what if a value Warner. Well, they made Barbie movie that worked out for them. That's been there.
Well, that came before the merger.
No,
Well,
the
sorry, the
Barbie movie.
decision to make
Oh
it
yeah,
came before the merger. They'd already committed to making it. That actually they had effectively already made it. They just hadn't released it yet.
yeah,
So you can't give them credit for that. That's sort of like, it's kind of the whole thing of like presidents, if they took credit for something that was someone else's decision who came before them, uh like the thing happens 3 months into their term and they're like, oh, I did that. No, you didn't.
yeah. Yeah, it's crazy to me that like we already had this figured out. Like we had all the big studios, they all made that they were all like percentage owners on Hulu, and they just all dumped their stuff collectively on Hulu, and it worked out great for a while. And then they all were like, "Wait a minute, we can do this better on our own," and lost so much fucking money. And in the end, they still losing money. Disney isn't even. I don't think Disney Plus is profitable yet. I'm pretty sure. Um, and that was that was supposed to change like a year ago. They keep changing their estimate for when Disney Plus is supposed to be profitable.
So I'm gonna venture a bit of a theory, because as this conversation moves along, it's becoming more and more clear. I think what a lot of these companies did, obviously part of what was happening is they thought, oh, we'll become a big titan of streaming, and that'll be our way forward, and we'll make tons of money through streaming just like Netflix did or whatever. That obviously didn't happen. It isn't happening. So they probably, overshot. But I think in the process, one of the things that they did realize, and I don't think they were wrong on this, it just isn't working out maybe as well as they probably thought. Um, they probably figured, hey, if we're going to do this, we need to ramp up our ability to make first party content. We need to actually own everything from beginning to end, because if we're paying other people for content, we're going to lose too much money. So so I think a lot of these companies basically said, all right, we need to go on an acquisition spree. So they started buying up a lot of stuff in their effort to become streaming giants. And that, I think they overextended themselves. I mean, we're seeing Disney definitely did that. Clearly Paramount to some extent did. And I don't know what Peacock's status necessarily was, but I'm pretty sure they did too. All these companies ponied up a lot of money to buy their way into being sort of first party all the way from beginning to end. And as a result, you've got shareholders saying, okay, great, you spent that money. Mm-hmm. Now where's the return? And since none of these companies are any good at actually getting people on their streaming services, there's no return yet. The companies are technically worth more, but you can't tell from their earnings. So yeah, they've sort of shot themselves in the foot. And yeah, as a result, now we're seeing, again, exactly as you were saying, we're seeing everyone either trying to sell off parts of their company, or they're trying to pull off mergers, because logically there's, you know, if you can't manage to make profits on your own, your best bet is probably to sell out. Try to get yourself a giant golden parachute, you know, from the executive standpoint. And then you can say, oh yeah, I managed this big merger and I sold off a giant company, and woohoo, look at how great I am as a CEO.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I get at this point, that like the actual I mean, this has always been the case with public companies, but I feel like the streaming stuff is almost just a smokescreen to be like, hey, can we just get like every merger done now? Mm-hmm. Now it's like, oh, you know, I can go to the federal government and be like, oh no, Netflix is taking all of my money. The only way I can compete is if you let me become the largest media company this world has ever seen, and then I can compete with Stranger Things. And they'll probably let them, because we're not doing a great job of stopping mergers right now, or at any point in the past 10 years. I did see that the FTC is suing Kroger so they don't buy one of their major competitors. So we are doing something, but it's not here. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, so this is going to continue, I think, being a mess. The good news, I think, is at this rate, Paramount seems almost entirely unable to actually sell off their business. According to this report, they're still, I guess, looking to work with Skydance Media, which, all things considered, at least yes, it would technically be an acquisition. Skydance Media is huge, but at the same time, it's not like it's removing a player from the game. If you know what I mean. Like, this wouldn't be a situation where, for example, let's just say Samsung bought HTC. You don't have one player buying another player. In this instance, it's more like you have a giant company that just happens to be in this business, who's buying something that would be it would be them getting into more stuff, or expanding the type of reach they have, rather than taking out a competitor. So yeah, that would be, you know, I guess the least terrible of the outcomes. But if that doesn't work out, Paramount pretty much just has to keep operating as it does, which, okay, that's not the worst case. Um, though that might not be good for Star Trek fans.
It's fine. We've just been getting shit anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I've not watched anything. I don't care.
It is hard to be a Star Trek fan these days.
I'm just upset. I guess I'm the only one upset. We're not going to get another. We're not going to get a Star Trek 4 with Chris Pine and that gang. And that seems to probably not be in the cards anymore.
Well,
and
yeah, no kidding.
I know people didn't like those because they were a reboot or whatever, and the second one was pretty bad, but I liked the Star Trek 2009. It wasn't really a Star Trek movie, but it's fine. I thought it was pretty good, and I liked the third one that they made recently that no one saw.
Well, yeah, no one saw it because the second one was so bad.
Well, no one saw. They've honestly, I think they just forgot to market that movie. That's kind of the vibe I was getting. But yeah, the fourth one's been like stalled and then restarted and stalled again so many times. It's probably just dead.
Let's see. Okay, there was Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond.
Beyond Into Darkness was the second one. That was with Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan, and then third was Star Trek Beyond.
And that was Idris Elba, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I did see this one. It was so bad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you can be wrong. I don't think it was amazing, but I thought it was pretty good, and it also was like trying to do something new. That was the only one of these that tried to do that.
Look, I'll give you the first one. The first one was pretty good. It had some problems. It definitely had some problems. But yeah, it was a good attempt for starting back up.
Yeah, it's a good, inoffensive action movie.
Yeah. Into Darkness was it was not.
It was so bad. Holy shit! I watched it again, and that's the one that like really got me into Star Trek. And I just watched it again like a couple months ago, and it's terrible. Oh my god. It's so bad if compared to first of all, compared to the movie, it's ripping off.
Yeah.
And then secondly, the way they tried to like ham fist Star Trek lore into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they messed up.
It was real bad. I can't. I especially love the part where at the end, the plot is like Khan's got this whole ship full of frozen, genetically modified people, and at the end they're like, "All right, we're stuffing the frozen pods into a closet. We're not going to look at it again." It's like, what? There's people in there.
It almost felt a little bit like an Indiana Jones ending.
It literally was. It's like you're going in the fucking Area 51, buddy.
Yeah. And then Star Trek Beyond, the thing I remember really being annoyed with on that one is it was such an obvious like, okay, we really don't want to pay for a full cast, so we're just gonna take like, what was it, 2 people or 3? I forget now, but really like they didn't even have scenes with some of these people. If I remember, John Cho was I want to say he had literally like 90 seconds in the whole movie.
Yeah, he wasn't there.
I think Simon Pegg might have also been like barely in it.
No, Simon Pegg was in pretty much all of it because he also co-wrote it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they didn't,
all right.
There
was at least a couple of other people that they just basically weren't in the movie. I mean they were there, you can find scenes with them, but like they were backdrops more than they were actual characters. Anyway, so probably shouldn't sit on this too long, but
I can keep going.
Huh?
I can keep going.
I know you can.
I can keep doing this all day.
No, I have little doubt of that. Um, and actually, we probably should, just for giggles, do a whole movie random discussion episode someday. But uh, we'll save that for another time. Point is, Paramount, you're in bad shape. Speaking of other things that are in bad shape, though, you know what? I'm gonna switch the order of these. The
Me after playing Beat Saber.
yes. You before and after playing Beat Saber. But no, the Apple is apparently killing off one of its long-standing rumored, well, not just rumored, but known to exist, but never really fulfilled projects. They were making an electric car. Fun fact. And it was rumored that it was going to be a full electric car, just a lot like a Tesla. And apparently they were doing all kinds of stuff with it. Everything from designing, obviously, a software interface for the infotainment center, all the way to designing. Some of the rumors had them designing like enhanced like steering wheels, door handles. Like they apparently were trying to experiment with all kinds of like tweaks that they could do to the car that would make it a little bit more Apple-y. Carson, shocked that not a single prototype got leaked in the past 10 years. Honestly, part of me wonders if they ever actually made an actual prototype. Because the way some of the rumors happened, it kind of sounded like a few of their experiments might have been very much like, we built part of a car so you could literally crawl into a seat, but it's not actually a full car. You could climb into a seat. You could maybe like open the passenger side door, but you're in like a car that's cut in half, or you're in just like the front quarter of a car. Like that's how a lot of the rumors went. Anyway, but I don't know. Maybe it would be weird if they didn't have at least a few prototypes, but I don't know. Nevertheless, apparently they are killing this project.
Yep. No car.
My take on this, huge mistake. I think Apple, if there was ever a good time for a company to come out with a car that is targeting a market that is already kind of a little underserved, with a brand that, let's be honest, has a cult following that is stronger than Tesla's cults. It is larger than Tesla's cult, and their reputation is objectively way, way better than Tesla's at this stage. I mean, this seems like something Apple probably should have stuck with.
I don't think it would have gone well.
Okay.
I don't think Apple is. I don't see them as a company that would handle normal car stuff very well. This is a company that is allergic to repairs. First of all, it would have been obscenely expensive. I'm pretty sure. I don't know if they ever would have made like an Apple Car SE or whatever. I'm almost too poor to read the article about them discontinuing the car, because I don't think I would have been able to get them. And like I don't really know like what Apple would. The only way I would have seen them doing it is like if it was like very high end, and in that way they wouldn't have to sell it and produce it like a mass production car. It would just be like a weird niche thing that like Apple influencers would buy, and some rich people, and that's about it.
Yeah,
I could never in a million years see them trying to like be a Ford or even a Tesla, honestly. Although they both like not having unions, so that
Ooh,
tied
deep cut.
together. So yeah, I don't think that would have worked out particularly well unless it was a very niche thing that they only had to sell like 1,000 of a year. But that
So,
also doesn't seem like their MO.
as I picture it, um, certainly, I will definitely jump on the point of Apple fans and influencer types. That's the thing. I guarantee, uh, MKBHD 100% would have this car. Um, I, Unbox Therapy, I bet anything he'd be buying one. There would be a bunch of others. Um, and I think about a lot of the YouTubers that I've watched over the years who, at some point or another, have gone and gotten a Tesla. They love to talk about their Teslas, but they love talking about their iPhones more, which makes me think that they would probably be almost every one of them would probably be an instant convert. Um,
Yeah, I mean
that's
the overlap between like obnoxious Apple people and obnoxious Tesla people, that's it's not entirely a circle, but it's pretty close.
yeah. Um, oh god, it's really close. So yeah, I have no doubt that they would eat at least some of Tesla's lunch. Um, and it would be a while before they could possibly scale up to Tesla's level. So yeah, Apple would very likely start on kind of the same grounds that Tesla had to, which is make, I'm not going to say a supercar, but I envision them doing more of a luxury car because that does fit Apple's brand a little bit better. If they did a luxury car, um, presumably one that probably is a little more range focused than Tesla has been. I know Tesla is presumably range focused, but I feel like they tune for speed a little bit more. They still try to be the sports car. I think Apple could probably focus a little bit more on going for range. Um, and again, what stands out to me is this feels like something that right now we have we have a lot of auto companies that are pulling back from doing EVs, or they're very much slow walking it, especially in the US. They could have, a lot of them could have obviously come out with EVs much earlier than this.
Yeah,
They
I'm just, man, this part also annoys me so much. Where fucking GM is going and be like, we're scaling back electric cars because no one's buying an electric car. Yes, I don't have enough money for a fucking F-150 Lightning, GM. I don't have $80,000 to buy your truck. I need you to make the fucking Bolt again.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is granted, you're talking about this from the economic scale of it, but
I don't have
right.
Apple influencer money, unfortunately.
Yeah, but right now, if anybody wants anything approaching a decent EV, you're pretty much stuck going to Tesla, or you might maybe choose to import a car. Like, these are kind of your options. You don't have a lot of decent options, at least in the US, and even worldwide it's kind of iffy. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm seeing that here's a market where people want to buy cars. Obviously they have money to do so, but which is
I don't.
a small portion of the population.
Now,
But
let me be clear. I don't want to buy a car, but
fair enough.
I have to.
But yeah, that's the thing. No one is really competing with Tesla, not very well or effectively at least. Tesla is not gobbling up this market, but they're almost uniquely serving this market. And as a result, I'm seeing an opportunity here where Apple, if they were willing to go in and start out at the high end, I mean, this is something Apple's kind of keen on doing all the time anyway. Start out at the high end, service that group, and then do just like Tesla did. Start walking it down to lower and lower price points. start eating Tesla's lunch, because if any company is capable and experienced in doing exactly that, it's Apple. I think they could have done this. And you know, it would be 15 years out, but I think Apple would be not just in Tesla's position. I think they would probably have exceeded Tesla's position within 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, it just would have depended on how much do they want to be like a normal car company, and
I don't think they want to be that at all.
Right, and that's probably what it would have take, just because like we're kind of seeing the issues Tesla is having, where their product, what's the word?
Quality.
Their product quality, like quality assurance is not great.
No, it's infamously bad right now.
Yeah. So I couldn't see them doing it. Would have been weird.
Yeah.
Also wouldn't have been able to afford
it. Our own financial positions aside, I honestly, right. I think Apple could have made this work.
Well, they can make anything.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
It
seems that their AR/VR headset is proof that they can't make anything work, at least not out of the gate. But yeah, it obviously it does depend on their motivations and their aspirations, but part of me really thinks that they had this, or they could have had this one in the bag. Whether or not they want to be in this industry, that's an option, or that could be up for internal debate. But what I'm saying is, I think if they decided that they wanted to be in this industry, I think they would have done very well, or could have done very well. The one thing that could have been a stopping issue there is if the other automakers suddenly popped up and turned out to be like, oh, you know what? We changed our mind. Now we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Hey, Richard. So I mentioned this many times on game streams, usually near the end of game streams. Every Wednesday is a talk show, podcast style show called the RambleCast. Game streams happen on weekends, on Saturday and Sunday night. So, yeah, that is what this is.
What are video games? Apple be like.
Yes, what are the video games?
Yeah, what are the kids doing? Yeah, and that's the other thing here is that other companies have shown that, like, if they want to, they could eat Tesla's lunch in terms of like maybe not like the high performance EVs. They're still having some trouble there, but like in terms of actual accessible cars, that's kind of a big thing. And like GM was kind of doing that for a while. Seemed like other companies were kind of interested, and then, you know, like you said, they shifted over to higher end models in the past like 2 or 3 years, and they're not selling as many of those as they hoped. So my hope is that they will go back to trying to make EVs that normal people can buy. And at that point, I don't know where Apple would fit in unless they were just entirely riding on their brand. Which, yeah, sure, they'll sell some. But like, I don't know what Apple would do differently with a car. That's the thing here, is like, what does the Apple Car do? I'm sure it will have like really nice CarPlay, but I don't know what else beyond that. Like, presumably, it wouldn't surprise me if at some point part of the pitch was like self-driving, and then it turns out that is really difficult and probably not ever going to happen. So they just gave up on that.
I'd be shocked if it never happened. We've seen enough proof that autonomous self-driving cars certainly are possible. It's more an issue that they need the compute power to be able to reliably do it. And that's still an expensive thing to do well. Um, Regardless, yeah, it's a matter of time before some of these things come together. Now, and obviously the other angle to this too is Apple could have worked with another company to put this in, and there have obviously been stories about Apple reaching out to other companies and trying to set up partnerships, uh,
Yeah.
which to me raises an interesting question. I'm sure that some companies out there look at Apple and go, "We don't really want you like taking over our company and dominating our product line," and I would totally get that. What's surprising to me is that no one out there, or that Apple and someone out there couldn't work out some kind of terms to be like, all right, would you, like, can we work out a deal where Apple works with like one line of cars with you, and we'll put in our part, you put in your part, and we come out with a joint car that gets these qualities, and the Apple fans are obviously going to come and buy it. And
Right, like the Apple Car is just like another brand that GM or
right,
whoever has, Hyundai, whatever.
and I can see why Apple might not want to do that, but you know, if they were supposedly reaching out for partnerships, obviously they were willing to consider it. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised that no one could find a collaborative effort here. Like no, there was no way for them to work out a deal. That seems surprising to me. Because you gotta figure there's at least one car company out there, maybe not one of the bigger brands, but there's got to be at least one car company out there that had to look at this and go, you know what, man, if we can just slap an Apple logo onto this thing, how many more people would look at this and go, oh, we gotta have it? Some company had to have looked at that and seen that opportunity, and why they couldn't work out a deal is hard to imagine. Okay, anyway, so shall we hit the last topic?
Oh, I thought that was the last one. Okay, sure.
Nope. Nintendo.
I forgot.
Yeah. Well, I did change the order of things too. But Nintendo is pulling a bad guy move. They're trying to control the world. They're trying to do all their evil stuff. And in this instance, they're trying to sue a tiny little company that makes a Switch emulator. Now I say tiny little company. Technically, it's a pretty popular Switch emulator. But yeah, Nintendo is going after Yuzu. I assume I'm pronouncing that at least sort of correctly. So if you haven't checked it out, Yuzu is a Switch emulator. It works in kind of an unusual way. You basically have to export keys from a real Switch, and they are used in the process of playing games that were obviously pirated or exported. However, yeah. Point is, you can basically pirate Switch games, but you have to have an actual Switch in order to do it, or you have to use keys. Notably, you don't have to have a Switch to do this. There are ways around that.
Yeah, I I have not read enough about the actual legal filings, and I'm not a lawyer. I do. I would imagine that Yuzu is in the clear. It seemed like that Nintendo's argument was their argument was like it facilitates piracy. Um, but that's sort of an argument that's been used with other legal action with emulators. Um, so I don't really know if that's gonna work out. Um, Usually the defense is like, as long as you're not like telling people exactly how to do that, and you're not like using code you stole from Nintendo, you're in the clear. That's usually where I know that's where one of the there was the two commercial PS1 emulators back in the day that I did a Tech Tales on. It was the Connectix PS1 emulator and Bleem, and I think what brought down, if Sony sued both of them, I think what brought down the Connectix one was that at some point they were using like PS1 ROM in something, so that was clearly an issue that wasn't theirs to use. And Bleem, as far as I know, they never really got them on anything. It was just war of attrition. Like they sued them so much, and I kind of worry that's what's going to happen here because Nintendo has a lot of money. The Yuzu people also have money. They have like a Patreon going and stuff, so I'm sure they can fight it a little bit. But I do worry that they can just bog these people down until it's not worth it anymore. And this is an open source project, so someone else could take it on. But if that means taking it on, opens you up to also be sued by Nintendo for the same reasons.
Right.
I don't really know. At a certain point, it might just become like all the 50 million forks of like popcorn time that just get like slightly updated and hosted somewhere else to escape Hollywood's wrath.
Yeah. So there's been some discussion, and a lot of this comes down to technicalities about how the DMCA is worded and what exactly, like, when certain events happen. Part of this, from what I was seeing, has at least something to do with when do the keys get applied for decoding the game. So is it decoding at the time that the game is ripped? Is it decoding at the time that the game is being played on the system? Are the keys just being used to unlock something? Like, the exact specifics of the technology are very much at play here. And that's obviously part of why Nintendo created this DRM situation in the first place, is to make this a complicating factor. That being said, obviously, like, this is going to get down to the point of when this gets to a courtroom, if it ever reaches a courtroom. Obviously, like you said, a war of attrition is very much on the table here for Nintendo. And if they just have enough money and they're willing to just keep writing this out and filing every possible thing to keep Yuzu busy with court filings rather than ever actually reaching a courtroom, then yeah, they can obviously beat Yuzu into submission one way or another. That being said, if this reaches a courtroom, there's going to be some really weird, complicated issues coming up. One of which is obviously they're going to have to explain very detailed aspects of how every single thing fits together in the process of basically loading up the emulator and starting to play a game. Like, they're going to be detailing stuff like that to a jury, or, well, possibly a judge, whichever. That alone is already going to be kind of a weird courtroom issue. The other issue, and I think this could be very interesting, is what is the possibility of Nintendo walked themselves into a bad situation here? Because if this does reach a courtroom, if Nintendo loses this fight somehow, which right now there's a lot of fans who are really supporting Yuzu, and the theory is that if they fight this, a lot more are going to emerge very, very quickly. If this comes out in Yuzu's favor, Nintendo will have set precedent that could be absolutely damning to them and any attempt to squash long-term piracy. I say long-term in the sense of like archival piracy. Obviously, like, regular piracy will continue to be illegal, but the idea that you can basically dump your ROMs, play them however you like, Being able to keep them and store them and continue using software in the future that enables you to continue using them, like those kinds of things have not really been properly tested in court yet.
Yeah.
If Yuzu wins this, it changes that story completely, or could change that story completely, and might make Nintendo really regret this fight. And that's obviously a very optimistic version of this situation. Who knows? It may or may not ever play out that way, but it is worth considering. So I think this is an interesting case, or will be an interesting case. Not necessarily for what's actually said in it, because who cares, honestly? Like, the technicalities on this one are probably going to be just awful. No one's going to want to sit through this. It's going to be punishing. But it could be very interesting in the long run to see like what the end result ends up being. I'm certainly curious if this is going to possibly reopen some of the issues related to piracy and pretty much everything, or is this just going to be a blip? I don't know. That's what has me kind of thinking about it. Also, hello, Christopher. How's it going?
Yeah, I would hope that Nintendo's lack of meaningful archival gets brought up as something here, because I don't imagine this is going to go down the route of like, well, what is piracy?
You never know.
I would imagine they're going to try to stick to just like, we're not piracy. This is just like a research emulation tool, like how all emulators defend themselves for the most part. But you know, if it does go down that route, I think it'd be interesting to point out that Nintendo is really not good at like keeping its games accessible. Throughout the years. Really, all game companies most game companies are bad at this, but Nintendo feels like kind of a special case.
They do have a longer history of being, let's say, hostile towards archival and maintenance.
Well, hostile, and also hostile under the pretense of like, don't pirate our games, but also there's no other way to obtain our games.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would hope that becomes part of this defense, but I don't know. Again, I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, well, they haven't been as bad as, let's say, Sony. You know, Sony, of course, had region locking that was just wild. Like their history with region locking was insane. But yeah, other behaviors have not been great either. Nintendo has sort of joined other companies in being having bad behaviors. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. The one thing that I have to say on this though is, if Nintendo ends up losing this, I would almost bet money almost every game that comes out from Nintendo afterward will end up becoming live service, because that's really the last path that they have for trying to break piracy, if assuming that Yuzu wins in this.
Well, to do that, they'd have to know how to program games for online, and they barely know how to do that. So I think we're safe.
Well, yeah, which really is just going to mean that they'll suddenly decide it's time to start investing in that. It's either that, or they're going to have to really like lobby for whole new bills to be written, something that is even harsher than the DMCA, something that basically just gives them carte blanche to say that any form of piracy, no matter what, no matter how it is, it has to be banned in the strictest way possible. Like that's kind of the only other path Nintendo could have if Yuzu wins this. And that's a lot of ifs, you know. Who knows what path this could take, but I don't think Nintendo is in a good place if they lose this. And if they're not, that's like their only path out of it is either spending a lot of money on lobbying or they're going to have to like try new tactics, and live service is probably the only one that they really have.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that there has not been a similar yet. I don't know, maybe they're deviously planning something. There's not been a similar lawsuit yet against like the Dolphin developers who are making the Wii and GameCube emulator. I believe Citra, the 3DS emulator, is from a lot of these same people, and that wasn't named. So I guess they maybe think they have a stronger argument if they focus exclusively on the platform that is still supported.
Certainly yes.
That was mentioned in the lawsuit of like, look, someone leaked a copy of our new Zelda game before it was out, and they could play it in the simulator. So we're damaged.
Yeah. So there's 100%. That is definitely an aspect of this. What I would, so I think that's part of it. Because yeah, obviously it makes more sense to target based on what's current. You could, and I'm sure if they win this, they probably might start looking at some of the old emulators. But I think more importantly, and it was something I brought up earlier, the thing that makes this one different is that you have to use keys exported from a specific, or from presumably your own Switch. They set up that like the Switch uses a new DRM algorithm that is algorithm.
There's more there's more protections in place. This is a lot different than like emulating a DS.
Right.
Where it's just like, yeah, they didn't even try with security. We didn't have encryption back then.
Yeah. Well, and even in more recent consoles, like the Wii definitely had encryption. But it was the same level of it, or it was the same type of encryption strategy that always existed. They had, or not always, but that was common at that time, which is we put an encryption key in the hardware on the Switch. Every single game is encrypted a certain way using that same key, and you decrypt it live as it's reading the disc. That's it. It's straightforward. It's simple. It's not that complicated of a concept. And when people are dumping the games, what they were typically doing is dumping them using the hardware encryption key and just exporting it through other means, like sneaky ways of being able to access the direct read of the disc. In the case of the Switch, you can't do it that way. It actually has to be a dump of the game, and then it is using the real keys that are exported from your Switch in order to facilitate decoding. I think the reason that they're doing this lawsuit focusing strictly on this one emulator is because this is the one that gives them a path of saying, look, here's the law, it says this. The only way that they could get past this is by breaking the law in this specific way. I think that's what they're trying to accomplish, and that they're focusing on this because if they try to include the others, then the lawyers are pretty quickly going to say, no, look, these work this particular way. Like we don't have to control any of that stuff, and anybody can work around the law very, very legitimately ish, using all these means. And at that point, Nintendo's lawsuit gets watered down because big chunks of it basically get thrown out the window. And if that happens to your lawsuit, like, I mean, this isn't a universal thing, but generally speaking, if you sue somebody and then a big chunk of your case ends up becoming effectively invalidated or proven wrong, a jury will typically just kind of say, okay, well, the rest of it's obviously irrelevant too, let's ignore it. Or like there's a history of, if a plaintiff shows up and wins on one count, they probably win on most counts. If a defendant wins on one count, they usually win on most counts. And, you know, this is a situation where it makes a lot more sense to show up and pick something you know you should win on, or Nintendo's pretty sure they should win on, and not risk giving a jury or a judge the opportunity to say, well, you got this one thing wrong. What are the odds that you're really getting the other stuff wrong too? So yeah, I think that's why they're focusing on this specifically right now. And again, if they get this win, they might come back around and target the others. That could happen. But in the meantime, I'm sure they want to go with the strongest case they have.
Yep. Good times.
Yeah. So big companies doing big company stuff. Okay, well, that is about all I have, though I see now that Richard Lewis died. That's a shame. Breaking news. Sorry.
Heard it here first.
Yes, or maybe in Discord like an hour ago. So anyway, yeah, I think that's all the topical topics I have. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Nope.
Do you have anything you'd like to pitch?
No.
I don't believe you, but okay.
I'm switching it up today.
All right. Well, in that case, if you'd like to support the channel, there are links down below to Cash App, Streamlabs, and Patreon. And huge thanks to those who are already supporting the channel, including David, Carson, Austin, Diablo, and Curvy Mermaid. I will be back this weekend with some game streaming. And let's see, will there be any other stuff to mention? I don't know. Anyway, huge thanks to everyone who came by, listened, who chatted. You guys are a huge help. You're awesome. I love you all. But with that, we're going to take off. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. And, well, yeah, good night, everybody.